So we're moving over to the EU. What are the details of the European Commission proposal to extend the legacy device deadline from May 24 to 2027 for the high-risk devices and 2028 for the lower risk devices? Well, this was a proposal that the European Commission made public actually in December, and then in January 6th, the actual proposal was made to the European Parliament and Council. So this is not a guideline, this is actually a change to the legislation, so it will be an amendment. And as in the question, there are these two dates that are now in it. Proposed to be in effect. It still has to pass Parliament and Council voting, but the higher risk devices, the class 3s and the 2B implantables, they can be placed on the market for an additional 3 years. So that is quite an extension. It was back in 2024, but now it goes all the way out to 2027, end of the year. And the lower risk devices, the class 2As and the remainder of the Bs and the one sterile measuring and reusable surgical, they get an extra year all the way out to the end of the year, December 31 on 2028. So there are some noteworthy extensions there. And one of the other provisions is that the 1-year sell-off period, which was previously in place, has been removed. So basically, you're not bound by 1 year to clear out all the devices in the supply chain. So all of this was to address the situation that became very apparent. A lot of people have been waving the flag, but the European Commission now has responded to indicate that there were not enough notified bodies, and their capacity was not sufficient to handle the workload to make sure all the devices that needed to be on the market were in fact complying to the MDR. And as a result, their tack was to extend the life of the legacy devices. So if we take a look at this timeline, we've revisited this numerous times, but we have on the bottom timeline here, we have this voluntary registration period, which we're currently in the lighter gray, and then the mandatory period based off a European notice that EUDAMED is ready. If we layer in what we just now have learned, legacy medical devices used to come prior to this, and actually I guess it's still in effect today until the proposal gets officially approved, but 2024 May timeframe is when that set of legacy devices, all legacy devices, were able to be placed on the market, and then they hit that deadline, and thereafter you could only market the MDR compliant devices. So this has been extended all the way out to 2027, and then an extra year for the class 2 ABs and the ones measuring sterile and reusable. So that goes out quite far. And if we layer in the MDR requirements for devices that comply with the MDR regulation, there's a number of timelines there, and class 1s have long been in place for self-certifications and so on. I also want to touch on IVDs. The proposal really focused on medical devices. There's one little touch point for IVDs. They did not move the dates, so that's still in place for the legacy devices to be placed on the market up until 2025 May. Now, actually, medical devices are much longer, 2 years later. But the IVDs also previously had a 1-year sell-off period, and this proposal removes that as well. So I know this gets pretty complicated, pretty busy there. Feel free to give us a question if you have any, concerns about understanding this particular slide. We did try to represent what's going on in the timeline. All right, moving on to the next question. We're still Yeah, this particular question also related to the legacy extension. Does the European Commission legacy device extension proposal impact the EUDAMED requirements? Are the dates in the MDR for UDI implementation still applicable as they are written for the different risk classes? So this is pretty straightforward. The proposal only talked about legacy medical devices, and they actually had to be qualified. So there's no change to the EUDAMED implementation timing, the UDI device registration compliance dates that are hard-coded or hard mentioned in the actual regulation are still there. They're not planned to be changed. So there is one aspect that you might want to take note of, and we're certainly preparing for this, is that because the legacy devices are now able to be placed on the market much longer, like 3 and 4 years longer, we expect those legacy devices, more of them, to be reported into EUDAMED, whereas before they were required to be off the market, and therefore the medical device regulation equivalents would be pretty much in place. So that is probably one particular difference, one impact. But the actual dates for the implementation of EUDAMED and so on are completely independent, not at all related to this legacy extension. We do have a graphical view of those dates, a little bit easier to understand. We're sitting here in this voluntary actor module registration and the voluntary UDI and device registration time period. And then anxiously waiting for this completion of the audit and the European Commission announcement. We have that 6-month delay in the regulation. And then all these transition times and the mandatory registration times remain in place. So none of these dates were changed by, are expected to change as a result of this proposal.